So, how is everybody? Excellent. I stand between you and booze, I understand. Why would I travel from Vancouver to here to speak with you? Well, clearly to show photos of my family. Because I am the ugliest one in this photo. This is what you get for the next 30 minutes. But really, who am I? Well, I did start out teaching high school for 4 years. And then I said, well, that was fun. Maybe I'll move on. And I went into higher ed, the British Columbia Institute of Technology. And then corporate sucked me in, where I spent 6 years with SAP and now 6 years with TELUS, which is kind of like British Telecom. Otherwise, I would say I've got 20 plus years of organizational zaniness. Now this photo, this is in China. They went around the house. Is that not zany? So the goats, aka the kids from left to right, that's Kate, that's Cole, that's Claire, I bring them up because of this, Damien. One night, Denise, my beloved, was away, and the kids wanted the movie, and there was no popcorn. We had to head out to a Tesco, to a Sainsbury, to go find popcorn. Of course, when we get to the grocery store, what happens? Two of them say I have to go to the loo, and we've all been to the grocery store with kids before. That is not a good scenario. So as we finally found the loo, it was back behind the deli counter. There was a notice board back there, an employee notice board, and it said this: employees, if you are caught on the floor with your mobile phone, you will be terminated at the end of your shift. The management. So, me being me, I put this into action. I went out to the confectionery aisle with Claire, Cole, and Kate. Now, Claire has a gluten sensitivity. I pretended she had celiac disease. Damien walks by. I said, Damien, mom's away. Claire here wants popcorn, but I can't tell if any of these popcorn boxes are gluten-free. Can you help me? And with a look of disdain, he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. What the heck is celiac disease? I said, look, just find me a popcorn box without gluten. So he looks around, he looks around, he looks around. He's like, I can't tell. And I said, Damien, I've left my mobile phone at home. Do you have one? And the look of shock horror that overcame Damien, because he had been in that employee room, hadn't he? He said, well, I'm not supposed to. And then this moment, this glimmer occurred. And he said, oh, I should, shouldn't I? So he pulls out his 15-inch phablet and he effortlessly goes over to Orville Redenbacher's site and he finds out that it's gluten-free. So I high-five him, we go home, and everything's fine. But this is the crux of my issue. Why is it that our organizations are saying, you cannot do good for the customer, yet the employees are actually saying, I need to do good for the customer? So, ultimately, because of this, I've made a few observations, and, I read a book, wrote a book. For example, plan ahead. Also, if you do write a book, keep calm and proofread. Thought you might like that in England. And of course, if there is a fire, please, please exit before tweeting about it. Hashtag HR event 15. But seriously, as HR directors, as HR leaders, this is my purpose, is to educate you about what employees want. And you know this, because over on the right is life. This mezzanine of colors, this cornucopia of opportunity. Yet in the organization, what happens? You're told to paint in the one color of a paint can. That's not right. Our employees want to be painting in all colors. They want to collaborate like we do in life. So ask yourself this question: how do we solve problems? Is it, other than the Rubik's Cube and Sudoku, do we like it like this all the time? Or perhaps maybe we should be asking the question as HR leaders, how should we be solving problems in our organization? Another question I ask, is engagement, i.e. employee engagement, an isolated event like this? Feels hard, pushing the ball bearing up a mountain. Or is it perhaps to be done collaboratively? So, when you're feeling alone and you're feeling like it feels really heavy to do this stuff, don't you feel it's a lot like jail in your organization? And that is ultimately the second point here. Now, John McCloy, who was assisting the Allies when we were sort of repatriating Europe during World War II, as they were going across the land and they started to enter Germany, he remembered Rotenburg ob der Tauber, which essentially goes by Rotenburg. Anyone been there? Show of hands. It is this wonderful medieval town that was created sort of in the 1300s. And what he did was said, should we obliterate this town, or maybe we should preserve this for generations to come? So instead of obliterating, what did he do? He reached out to his German compatriot who was looking after Rotenburg, Klaus, Colonel Klaus, and said, might we preserve this? Might we reach across the barriers? Might we say, even though you've got, with Himmler and Hitler, march until the death orders, might we work together to save something? And this lovely town, which you should go see, is still there. And McCloy, after the war, was named the Honorable Protectorate of Rotenburg by reaching across the boundaries. That's our job as leaders, to do something that might not be the norm. But Blessing White and other HR consulting type organizations tell us that our organizations are in fact disengaged. In fact, in the EU, roughly 31% are engaged in the European Union. The competitor, Aon Hewitt, in the EU as well, says only about 19% are engaged. And of course, as we've heard earlier today, Gallup, this is from North America incidentally, look at this. After roughly 12 years of surveying thousands of organizations, we have not made a dent in the changes between disengaged, kind of engaged, and engaged. In fact, we could argue that, at least in North America, 70% are like, why am I here? And that saddens me. But this is the interesting thing. You say you want HR a seat at the table. I say HR needs to be the table. So for example, Gallup says in America, it's lost productivity of about $450 to $550 billion because of the disengaged worker. That's you building the table. Aon Hewitt says it's $10,000 in lost profit per disengaged employee. So yeah, I've got this issue, and I think it's disengagement. I think that we are not playing enough causal reality to what a disengaged or not engaged workforce is and the business results that could ensue thereafter. Because without engagement, there is no culture. Without culture, there's no engagement. Without an engaged employee, there's no collaboration. This is me paying homage to my Canadiana, by the way. Without collaboration, are you really going to have business results? If you don't have business results, remember that whole we love our customers thing? Well, there aren't any customers. And if you don't have any customers, like these 6 examples suggest, you don't have any company. So, we go to Greg Smith. Greg Smith used to work for Goldman Sachs. And about 3 years ago, he wrote an op-ed piece for the New York Times. And in it, he said, Goldman Sachs stinks. We are not treating our customers like people. We are just in it for profit. And when that was published by the editors of the New York Times, guess what happened? Yeah, their shares dropped 3.4% that day. Now, when you're Goldman Sachs, that was a $2.15 billion market value loss that day, and the 3rd largest decline in the S&P. Now, those are financial metrics because of Greg Smith, who had been working there for 12 years and was utterly disappointed in where the direction of the company was headed. But what about now all the other costs that HR had to deal with? All those meetings and focus groups, and what is wrong with our culture? Who is Greg Smith? Who is this? Peter Drucker. Thank you, Lucas. He said the purpose of business is to create and keep a customer. But somewhat ironically, he also said so much of what we call management consists in making it difficult for people to work, right? Because we're the ones that do this. We invent the phone, and we put the 1, 2, 3 at the top, then we invent the computer, and we put it at the bottom. I tell you, we're humans, all right. So I wrote a book about this, and yes, Denise and I, thankfully, are still married. Now, which do you prefer? Do you prefer the left with the egotistical, hierarchical leader who's standing on the arrow with the minions, the head count, the people holding onto the arrow for dear life whilst this leader says, go this way or you'll be terminated, aka Damien? Or perhaps, paying homage again to Canada geese, that you like to fly in a skein, which is a V formation where the geese share leadership. as they're moving from point A to point B. Think about that metaphorically, and that is the essence of Flat Army. These 4 models to get us to becoming like Canada geese. Can't believe I just said that out loud. We'll come back to this in a second, but what I thought I'd do is show you a case study of it in action with where I work. Since 2008, I've been at TELUS, that British telecom Vodafone type company. And what is it? Well, it's a $12 billion company, 45,000 team members across 9 different countries, 13.5 different million customer connections. And we've got people that work from home and mobile in the office. We've got 10,000 people in a union. We've got typical business units, but we had some engagement challenges. For example, we were better than most, but not very good nonetheless with our engagement scores. And by the way, we use Aon Hewitt. So 53, 58, 54, like, okay, so half the people still don't really want to be there. This is not great for customer service. So what we decided to do was to put you first, customers first, with a better sustained competitive advantage through people. And we did things like launch the TELUS Leadership Philosophy, the TLP, this open, collaborative, connected leadership systemic model for everybody. A recognition program called Bravo, a Give Where We Live campaign, where we donate hours and time into philanthropy and volunteerism and the community. A learning model that says learning is equal parts formal, informal, and social, and all kinds of social collaborative tools, like Habitat Videos, our own YouTube, where people go out into the field and meet with a frontline agent, whether it's a customer store, whether it's field technicians, and they start videoing what's going on so that can be learned back in the organization. Or leaders, like our Chief Corporate Officer, Josh Blair, and I, just having a chat on a live webcast, no preordained questions. There's a Twitter, essentially, back channel called microblogging, and that's recorded and videoed for others to watch later. We have TELUS Collaboration House, this virtual world, a virtual world, where coaching and mentoring takes place. We do things like gamification, where that TELUS leadership philosophy about games is built through the development of an online speed skating team. You build these speed skaters using the behaviors and attributes of the TLP. Or customer stores, going through a game of learning those attributes on how to interact with customers. We even put our own Flickr, essentially, called Habitat Photos, where, as you can see, some people have been to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. To us, this is community. This is culture. We even use things like Jam, as part of Success Factors, where we allow people to provide input on how to use work styles, our Work From Anywhere coined program. We use Jam for our whole entire high potential, high performer program. 1,000 people a year use this collaborative platform in which to learn their one-year curricula. And of course, we've got Brent. Brent's a SVP in the consumer marketing space. He has a vlog, a video blog called Brent's Rant, which he checks in on all the time and says when people say what they say, didn't swear once, not sure if that was really Brent Johnson. Brent says, more ranting and swearing to come. That's your culture. So how has this helped? Are there any business benefits? Well, remember this. This happened. Now that feels good as an organization, but are there any business benefits? Well, the CCTS, the place that in Canada collects data on whether or not your complaints are going up or down, the industry of telecom in Canada is made up of 3 big players who control 90% market share, each essentially with a third each. And TELUS is one of those 3. Our complaints went down 27%, yet the industry of telecom, of which we're in, went up 26%. Now, what if we were to take TELUS out of that metric? Do you think that our customers are getting slightly more happier of what we're doing? Resumes went through the roof. The stock split, and it now sits at 43 after splitting essentially at 72. And I got to do something great. I get to launch TTO, the TELUS Transformation Office, where we now get to help our customers who want to enjoy a similar journey, a telecom in the culture space. But Flat Army is, in essence, the kind of TELUS playbook. It's built on these 4 models. And I'm not going to go into each of them in that much detail. But there's free books available after this, so come join me. So I think leaders, first of all, need to instill the connected leader attributes, where, metaphorically, every one of us are part of the roots in the ground. Those are the becoming attributes. The trunk of the tree, which is the sturdy, let's get things done, to then create beauty, which is the going beyond attributes. And there's 15 of them. We need not get into them today. But if you were to instill these behaviors across all of your people, then they start singing from the same choir sheet, to mix a metaphor. Now, this is the hygiene piece. Every day, if a leader or the team were to instill the CLAM, the Collaborative Leader Action Model, start every day at 1 o'clock in every one of your actions. Connect with people. Okay, who needs to be here? All right, let's consider our options. Have we done this before? Have they done it before? Where's IT? Should we consider this? Then decide, it doesn't have to be consensual, by the way, and communicate what that decision was. Then go and do it, so you create. Come back and say, whoa, did we do what we said we were going to do, i.e. confirm? And then what we miss, sadly, in much of our organizations is to congratulate, to celebrate the effort. That's the 6 C's of the CLAM. Next up are the collaboration technologies. And you like the hard C's? Remember I mentioned the kids were called Claire, Cole, and Kate? I'm running out of hard C's. If you got any more words, verbs, adjectives, you can help me out here. Because in the collaborative technologies, you have conversations, or you converse. There's content to contribute, and there's context. Now, those pillars you see there, those 3 columns, those technologies are going to change. What I'm more interested in are those 3 C's of collaborative technologies: conversations, the content, and the context you provide. And notice I didn't start with this. I started with those leadership attributes. And then lastly, as you've seen, what we did at TELUS was instill this learning model, which we call pervasive learning, where, like leadership, there's times for formal leadership and formal learning. And equally so, there are times for informal and social learning. Because I can learn a lot by being in a classroom, but I can learn a lot more at times by having a coffee with my boss, as much as I can learn about Brent's Rant, which is a social video blog. So together, if you were to do this, this Flat Army, paying homage to the Latin term armada, i.e. army, where it comes from armada. Armada is a flotilla of vessels floating together, flat, still with a captain, but working together. Because ultimately, I think we are born to work together. I don't know about you, but I used to get up when I was 6 and 7 and 8, and I'd go out on the street, and I'd play hide and seek with the kids in the street. And that hide and seek, how was it created? It was created together. There wasn't the bully or the Dan. There were 8 or 10 of us. It mixed up. And we came up with the rules. What was the timelines? What were the boundaries? Who's it first? That's what we're used to. We're like this girl because we're born to be part of something. We see all these rules. And we say, oh, I'm just going to blow past that sign and I'm going to go to the beach with my dog. Or in an unstaged shot, we will climb on the pipe. Won't we? Catherine Switzer in 1967 faked her name into the entry of the Boston Marathon because women weren't allowed in the Boston Marathon at that time. But when the organizer saw her running, he went after her. That's the chap in the suit behind her, in the black suit. And a coil of men circled Catherine and said, no, she will complete the race. This is the right thing to do. So it requires conviction, both on behalf of the Catherines of this world and the supporters of Catherine. This type of open leadership needs a new perspective. Must we keep killing the bull? And history tells us it requires belief, doesn't it? We can break down the wall. And it does require some planning ahead, as we did in the late 1930s at the Louvre with the Mona Lisa, only to resurface several years later after that planning ahead worked out. Change requires leadership, like former New York City Mayor Bloomberg, who, when he went into office in 2002, he asked for the biggest room you could find. He didn't want Mayor Rudy Giuliani's pompous office with 2 doors and regal decadent finishings. He said, find me the largest office you've got, or room, in fact, which they coined the bullpen. And he said, now, fit as many desks and people as you can into there so that we can work better together. By the way, he's about a $12 billion man and had the leadership conviction to say we can do things different in New York City City Hall. Now, I'm not an ornithologist, which is the doctor of birds. But whenever I'm traveling on my bike, which I like to cycle a lot, or a car, or walks in the park, when I see this, I get those tingly feelings of how organizations could perhaps think differently, like, metaphorically, the birds. Our people don't necessarily want to be at the apex or the top of the scheme. And there are some that do. They violently want to be that leader. But how might we mesh the two as we shift from point A to point B? How might we instill these types of collaborative behaviors so that our engagement scores can go up, but as owners of the table, that is HR who's building it, we can create business results as well. Now, failing all that, sadly, I suggest that you put a whiskey machine in the cafeteria and all will be well. Thank you very much.